At my daughter's wedding, the groom's wealthy family labeled me a fake mother, but my daughter's bold decision left them drowning in shame forever. My name is Rosa, and I need to tell you about the day that changed everything for my family. You might think you know how this story goes, but trust me, you don't. I raised my daughter Isabella, alone since she was 4 years old. Her father decided that family responsibilities weren't for him and disappeared one day, leaving me with a little girl who asked for months when Daddy was coming home. I worked 2 jobs, cleaning office buildings at night and serving tables during the day, scraping together every dollar for her future. Isabella was my everything. When she graduated valedictorian, I sat in that auditorium wearing a dress I'd found at Goodwill, tears streaming down my face with pride. Her full scholarship to the state university felt like validation that all those years of exhaustion and sacrifice had meant something. When Isabella told me she was marrying Ryan, I was genuinely happy for her. He came from old money. His family owned half the commercial real estate downtown and lived in one of those historic mansions that looked like something from a movie. I'll be honest, I felt intimidated during their engagement parties, but Isabella loved him and that was enough for me. The wedding day arrived, and I wore a navy blue dress with small flowers, the nicest thing I owned, purchased specifically for this occasion. The venue was the Grand View Country Club, where I'd once cleaned their windows during a catering event years ago. Now, I was walking through the front door as family. Everything gleamed with old money, chandeliers that caught the afternoon light, floors so polished they reflected the ceiling, arrangements of orchids and roses that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I felt out of place immediately, but I held my head high. This was my daughter's day, and I belonged here because she wanted me here. I found my assigned seat at a table toward the back of the ballroom. That should have been my first warning sign. The mother of the bride relegated to the cheap seats while Ryan's extended family occupied the premium tables near the altar. But I told myself it didn't matter. I was here to support Isabella, not to compete with people who measured worth by bank account balances. That's when I saw the place card. Instead of simply reading Rosa Martinez, there was a handwritten note underneath an elegant script: "Fake and uneducated mother doesn't belong with decent people." My hands started shaking as I read it again, hoping I'd misunderstood, but the words were clear, deliberate, and cruel. I looked around and noticed Ryan's family at the head table, whispering among themselves and glancing in my direction. His mother, Catherine, caught my eye and actually smiled. Not a warm smile, but the kind of smile predators give their prey. A few of Ryan's relatives started chuckling, pointing at me like I was entertainment for their amusement. I heard one of his aunts whisper loudly enough for nearby tables to hear, "Well, what did you expect from someone like that?" 23 years of hard work, sacrifice, and unconditional love reduced to a joke on a piece of paper. These people in their designer clothes and inherited confidence had decided that my worth as a human being was something to laugh about. The shame burned through me like acid. Every eye in that room seemed to be on me, judging my dress, my shoes, my very presence in their sacred space. My first instinct was to leave quietly. Don't make a scene. Don't ruin Isabella's special day. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor, and started walking toward the exit. But then I heard Isabella's voice cutting through the murmur. Mom, where are you going?" I turned around to see my daughter walking toward me in her beautiful white dress, looking confused and concerned. The entire ballroom had gone quiet, all these wealthy guests watching our family drama unfold like it was dinner theater. "It's okay, mija," I managed to say, my voice barely steady. I think I should go." But Isabella's expression changed as she took in the scene, the crumpled note still in my hand, her new in-laws' guilty faces, my obvious distress. I watched my sweet daughter transform into someone I barely recognized. Her jaw tightened with an anger I hadn't seen since she was a child defending herself from playground bullies. "Mom, show me what they wrote," she said firmly. "Isabella, please," I whispered. "It's your wedding day. Don't make a scene because of me." But my daughter, my brilliant, strong daughter, whom I'd raised to never let anyone diminish her worth, gently took the note from my trembling hands. As she read it, I watched her face go through a transformation that would be burned into my memory forever. The blushing bride disappeared, replaced by a woman with fire in her eyes. She turned toward the head table where Ryan sat in his perfect tuxedo, looking mortified and pale. "Ryan," Isabella called out, her voice carrying clearly across the silent room. "Did you know about this?" I watched my new son-in-law's face crumble as he realized what had happened. He started to stammer, "Isabella, I swear I didn't. My mother must have—" "Your mother?" Isabella's voice rose dangerously. "Your mother thought it would be appropriate to humiliate the woman who raised me, who sacrificed everything for me, on our wedding day." Catherine, Ryan's mother, stood up with that same cruel smile still on her face. "Isabella, darling, we were simply trying to maintain some standards. Surely you can understand that your mother doesn't quite fit in with our social circle." That's when Isabella did something that shocked everyone in that elegant ballroom, including me. She started removing her wedding jewelry. First, the pearl earrings Catherine had insisted she wear, then the diamond bracelet that was a family heirloom. "You're absolutely right," Isabella said, her voice deadly calm. "My mother doesn't fit in with people like you, and neither do I." She handed the jewelry to a stunned bridesmaid and began lifting her wedding dress slightly as she walked over to where I stood, frozen in shock. "Isabella, no," I pleaded. "This is your wedding. These people spent money. Your friends are here. You've planned this for months." "These people," she said loudly, making sure everyone could hear, just showed me exactly who they are, and my real friends would never disrespect my mother. She took my arm and started walking me toward the exit, her wedding dress trailing behind us like a white banner of defiance, past all those shocked faces, past the expensive flower arrangements, past the 5-tier cake that would never be cut. Isabella, Ryan called desperately from behind us. Please, we can work this out. It was just a misunderstanding. My daughter stopped at the doorway and looked back one final time. The only misunderstanding, she said clearly, was thinking you and your family were worthy of being part of mine. If you leave now, Catherine shrieked, you'll be nothing. No money, no connections, no future. Isabella looked at her soon-to-be former mother-in-law with pity. I'll have something you'll never understand, dignity. And just like that, we walked out of that country club together. My daughter chose me over her wedding, over the man she thought she loved, over the wealthy life she could have had. As we got into my old Honda in the parking lot, I finally found my voice. Mija, what have you done? You just walked away from your future. Isabella looked at me with fierce love in her eyes. No, Mom, I just walked toward it. When we got home to my small house, Isabella was still in her wedding dress, but she'd never looked more like herself. I made us coffee, the same Colombian blend I'd been buying for years, and we sat at my kitchen table in silence for a while. You want to talk about what just happened? I finally asked. I want to call Miguel, she said, referring to her older brother, and Uncle Carlos, Uncle Roberto, and Cousin Danny. I raised an eyebrow. Mija, that's not necessary. We don't need to involve the whole family in this mess. But Isabella was already dialing. Within 2 hours, my living room was packed with the men of our family, and let me tell you, they were absolutely livid. Miguel, who's 3 years older than Isabella and has been her protector since childhood, was pacing around my small living room like a caged animal. They wrote what on Mom's place card? Carlos, my younger brother, cracked his knuckles in a way that made me nervous. Those rich pendejos have no idea who they just messed with. Roberto, my older brother, who'd done time in his youth and never backed down from a fight, was Googling something on his phone. I found them. Look at this. Ryan's whole family is going to be at some charity auction this Saturday supporting local arts programs, he read with disgust. Hypocrites. Danny, Carlos's son, was the youngest man in the room, but had inherited the family temper. Tia Rosa, you raised the strongest woman I know. How dare they disrespect you like that? I looked around at these fierce men. My brothers who had helped me raise my children when money was tight, my son, who had always been my protector, my nephew, who worked construction to support his own family. They were all talking at once, planning something I wasn't sure I wanted to know about. Guys, please, I interrupted. I appreciate the support, but I don't want any trouble. What's done is done. Miguel stopped pacing and looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Mom, they humiliated you at Isabella's wedding in front of everyone. They made you feel ashamed of working honest jobs, of raising your children with love instead of money. Your son's right, Carlos added, his voice getting heated. We've been watching those snobs look down on our family for months, but this crosses every line. Isabella finally spoke up. I told them about the charity auction. It's this Saturday at the Riverside Convention Center. Black tie, very exclusive, very public. Roberto held up his phone. I just bought tickets for all of us. Apparently they'll take anyone's money for a good cause. You did what? I asked, alarmed. We're going to that fancy party, Carlos announced. And we're going to show Ryan's family exactly what happens when you mess with a woman who raised her children with dignity and respect. I looked at my family, these men who had stood by me through every struggle, who had celebrated every small victory, who had never once made me feel ashamed of working with my hands to provide for my children. What are you planning to do? I asked, though part of me was afraid of the answer. Miguel smiled, and it wasn't his sweet, charming smile. It was the smile he wore right before he'd beaten up the kids who used to make fun of Isabella's second-hand clothes in high school. We're going to teach them some respect, he said simply. Danny was already looking up formal wear rental places on his phone. We need to look the part. Can't have them thinking we don't belong at their precious charity event. This is a bad idea, I said. But even as I said it, I felt something stirring in my chest. Not revenge exactly, but something like justice. Roberto put his hand on my shoulder. Rosa, you've spent your whole life being the bigger person. You've taken every insult, every slight, every moment when people looked down on you because you weren't educated enough or wealthy enough. But they went after your worth as a mother, and that's sacred. I looked around at these strong, determined men, and I realized they weren't doing this for revenge. They were doing this for love, for me, for Isabella, for every working parent who'd ever been made to feel less than worthy by people who inherited their worth instead of earning it. Saturday night arrived with the weight of inevitability. I watched my men get ready like they were preparing for war, which, in a way, they were. Miguel had rented a sharp black tuxedo but kept his hair slicked back in what I called his business look. Carlos wore his lucky cufflinks, the ones he'd worn to every important confrontation in his life. Roberto had gotten a fresh haircut but moved like a boxer preparing for a fight. Danny looked handsome in his formal wear but carried himself like he was ready for anything. Mom, you don't have to come if you don't want to, Isabella offered one last time. After everything you're doing for me, I wouldn't miss it, I replied. The Riverside Convention Center had been transformed into an elegant venue, crystal chandeliers, expensive art displays, waiters carrying champagne flutes. We walked in looking every bit as sophisticated as the other guests. But I could feel the difference in my family. These men had purpose. It didn't take long to spot Ryan's family. They were at a VIP table near the front, laughing and holding court like royalty. Catherine was wearing what probably cost more than I made in 6 months. Her husband Richard kept adjusting his gold watch like it was a badge of honor. Ryan looked miserable, probably still processing what had happened at his wedding. "There they are," Isabella whispered. She'd insisted on coming too, wearing a simple black dress that made her look more beautiful than she had in her expensive wedding gown. "Remember what we discussed?" Roberto murmured. "We wait for the right moment." The right moment came during the live auction portion of the evening. Richard had just made a big show of bidding $8,000 on a weekend wine tour, basking in the applause and admiration from nearby tables. That's when Miguel made his move. He walked up to Richard's table with a confidence I'd never seen before. "Mr. Hartwell," he said. "I'm Miguel Rosa's son. You remember my mother, the one your family thought was so amusing at the wedding?" The color drained from Richard's face. Catherine looked around nervously, probably hoping this confrontation wouldn't happen in such a public place. I'm not sure what you're talking about," Richard stammered. "Oh, I think you do." Miguel's voice was calm but carried clearly to the surrounding tables. "You remember the note calling her a fake and uneducated mother?" By now, people at nearby tables were starting to listen. This was exactly what Miguel had planned for. Carlos appeared at Richard's other side. "See, the thing is, our mother worked 2 jobs to make sure her kids had everything they needed. She taught us that respect isn't something you inherit, it's something you earn." Roberto approached Ryan, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "And you, boy, you threw away the best woman you'll ever know because your family told you she wasn't good enough." That's when things escalated beyond what anyone expected. Richard, probably panicked by the attention, stood up and made a fatal mistake. "Security!" he called out loudly. "These people are threatening us." That was Danny's cue. At 28, he was the youngest of my men, but he'd grown up in our neighborhood where you learn to defend yourself early. When Richard pointed at them to call security over, Danny stepped forward. "The only threat here," Danny said firmly, "is to your reputation when everyone finds out what kind of people you really are." Richard tried to push past Danny, and that's when everything changed. Miguel caught Richard's arm, not roughly but firmly enough to stop him. "We're not done talking," Miguel said. What happened next was like watching a perfectly choreographed lesson in justice. Richard tried to pull away, and somehow ended up stumbling backward. Catherine started shrieking about assault, but Carlos calmly reminded everyone that they had simply approached to talk, and Richard was the one who had escalated things physically. Roberto moved toward the other men in Ryan's family, who were starting to stand up, probably thinking they needed to help. But these were men who had never been in a real fight in their lives, facing men who had grown up in neighborhoods, where you fought for respect and survival. "Sit down," Roberto said quietly, and something in his voice made them obey immediately. The beauty of it was that my family never threw the first punch, never did anything that could get them arrested. But within minutes, every man in Ryan's family was sitting down looking pale and shaken, while my men stood around them like guardians of justice. The whole ballroom was watching now, phones coming out, whispers spreading like wildfire. Ryan's family, so used to commanding respect through money and status, had been reduced to looking like scared children in front of everyone they wanted to impress, and the entire event got to see what real strength looks like when it's defending someone who deserves it. The confrontation at the charity auction was just the beginning. When we got home that night, Isabella was unusually quiet. I could see something brewing in her, something that worried me as her mother. "That felt good," Miguel said, loosening his tie. "Did you see Richard's face when everyone started staring?" "I recorded some of it," Danny added, holding up his phone. "The way he tried to play victim when he's the one who humiliated Tia Rosa." But Isabella wasn't celebrating with her brother and cousins. She was sitting on my couch, staring at her phone with an expression I didn't like. "Mija, you okay?" I asked. She looked up at me and I saw something dangerous in her eyes. "Mom, I have pictures from when Ryan and I were together. Private pictures." The room went silent. My heart sank because I knew exactly where her mind was going. "Isabella, no," I said immediately. "That's not who we are." "They humiliated you in front of everyone," she said, her voice tight with anger. "They made you feel worthless. They need to know what real humiliation feels like." Carlos and Roberto exchanged glances. Miguel sat down beside his sister. "Isabella, I get it," he said carefully. "I wanted to tear those people apart tonight, but sharing those pictures, that's different. That's crossing a line we can't uncross." "He crossed a line first," Isabella shot back. "Did you see Mom's face at that wedding? Did you see how small they tried to make her feel?" I could see the pain in my daughter's eyes, the same pain I'd felt when I read that cruel note. But this wasn't the answer. "Mija, look at me," I said, waiting until she met my eyes. "What they did was wrong, cruel, and inexcusable. But if you do this, you become someone I didn't raise, someone I don't recognize." For a moment, I thought I'd gotten through to her. She put her phone down and nodded. We all went to bed thinking the situation was under control. I was wrong. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing constantly. Texts, calls, notifications. Something was happening. "Mom!" Miguel burst into my room. Isabella did it. She posted the pictures. My blood went cold. I grabbed my phone and saw what my daughter had done in her anger and pain. Anonymous accounts on multiple social media platforms had shared intimate photos of Ryan, along with captions about entitled rich boys who think they're better than everyone else. I felt sick to my stomach. "Where is she?" I asked. "She left early for work," Miguel said. "Mom, this is bad. These pictures are everywhere." I spent the morning trying to reach Isabella, but she wouldn't answer her phone. When she finally came home that evening, I was waiting for her. "We need to talk," I said. Isabella looked defiant but also ashamed. "I'm not sorry," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "You should be," I replied. "What Ryan's family did was cruel and wrong, but this is vindictive and dangerous. You could go to jail for this, Isabella. He deserved it," she muttered. "Maybe he did," I said, and that surprised her. Maybe he deserved to feel humiliated and small, but the woman I raised doesn't take revenge like this. The woman I raised fights back with dignity and strength, not by destroying someone's life and reputation in such a personal way. Isabella sat down heavily on the couch. "Mom, I was so angry when I saw what they did to you." "I know," I said, sitting beside her. "I know you did it out of love for me. But mija, there are consequences for everything, and this is going to have consequences none of us are ready for." Miguel, who had been listening from the kitchen, came and sat with us. "The pictures are viral," he said quietly. "Local news is picking up the story. Ryan's going to be destroyed by this." That night, I lay awake wondering what my daughter had unleashed and whether our family was ready for the storm that was coming. The next few days were a whirlwind of chaos that I wasn't prepared for. The story had taken on a life of its own. "Local wedding revenge scandal rocks high society" was the headline in our town's newspaper. I found myself at the center of a story I never wanted to be part of. Isabella had been avoiding me since our conversation, staying late at work and leaving early. When she finally came home on Wednesday night, I was ready for a real conversation. "Sit down, mija," I said. "We need to talk about what you've done." She slumped into her chair like a teenager in trouble, not the grown woman she was supposed to be. "Mom, I know you're disappointed in me." "Disappointed doesn't begin to cover it," I said honestly. "What you did was wrong, Isabella, not just legally risky but morally wrong." "But they humiliated you first," she protested. "Yes, they did," I replied. "And it hurt. It hurt more than losing a job, more than your father leaving us, more than any physical pain I've ever felt. But what they did to me doesn't justify what you did to Ryan." Isabella looked up at me, confused. "So, you're taking his side now?" "I'm not taking anyone's side," I said firmly. "I'm trying to teach you the same lesson I've been teaching you your whole life, that being hurt doesn't give you the right to destroy someone else." The truth was, I was torn up inside. Part of me, the part that had felt so small and worthless at that wedding, felt a dark satisfaction knowing that Ryan was experiencing some of the humiliation I'd felt. But the mother in me, the woman who had tried to raise Isabella with integrity, was horrified by what my pain had driven my daughter to do. "I can't control what the rest of the family does," I continued. "Miguel and Carlos and Roberto, they're adults, and they chose to confront Ryan's family in their own way. I may not have agreed with their methods, but at least they looked those people in the eye when they stood up for me." "You think what I did was worse than what they did at the auction?" Isabella asked. "I think what you did was cowardly," I said, and watched her flinch. "You hid behind anonymous accounts and destroyed someone's privacy and dignity from the shadows. That's not the woman I raised you to be." Isabella was quiet for a long moment. "So, what do you want me to do? The pictures are out there now. I can't take them back." "I want you to face the consequences of your actions like an adult," I said. "And I want you to understand that while I love you, and I understand why you did it, I can't pretend to approve of it." That's when she surprised me with a question I wasn't ready for. "Mom, if you could go back to that wedding day, would you want me to handle it differently?" I thought about it for a long time before answering. "I would want you to stand up for me, which you did beautifully. I would want you to show Ryan and his family that their cruelty was unacceptable, which you did. But I would want you to do it in a way that let you look at yourself in the mirror afterward and be proud of the woman you are." "And you think I can't do that now?" she asked. "Can you?" I replied. "When you think about those pictures of Ryan being shared by strangers, by people who don't even know what he did to us, can you honestly say you're proud of that decision?" Isabella's shoulders sagged. "No," she whispered. "I felt good about it for maybe an hour. After that, it just felt dirty." "That's your conscience talking," I said. "That's the woman I raised trying to get through to the hurt girl who just wanted to protect her mother." We sat in silence for a while, both of us processing everything that had happened. Finally, Isabella looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom. Not for defending you, but for the way I did it." "I know, mija," I said. "Now we have to figure out how to live with the consequences together." Life has a funny way of surprising you when you least expect it. Thursday morning, I was having coffee and trying to figure out how to help Isabella navigate the mess she'd created when my phone rang. It was my sister, Maria. Maria and I had always been different. While I went straight to work after high school, she'd managed to build a successful accounting firm over the years. She employed about 30 people and handled the books for several major businesses in town. We didn't talk as often as we should have. "Rosa," her voice was tight with anger. "Miguel told me what happened at Isabella's wedding." I sighed. "Maria, I don't want this to become a bigger family issue than it already is." "Too late for that," she said. "Do you know where Ryan works?" Actually, I did know. He was a junior partner at some real estate development firm downtown. I'd heard him mention it during the few family dinners we'd shared before the wedding. Why? I asked, though I was getting a sinking feeling. He works for Hartwell Development Corporation, Maria said. Ring any bells? It took me a second, but then it hit me. Hartwell, as in Richard Hartwell, Ryan's father. It's a family business, Maria continued. Richard owns it. Ryan works there. Probably half his relatives are on the payroll. Maria? What are you thinking? I'm thinking that company has been systematically undercutting my bids for the Riverside Mall renovation project, she said. For 6 months they've been submitting proposals that are impossibly low, below cost, Rosa. I've been documenting everything because I suspected they were either lying about their capabilities or hiding costs somewhere. What kind of documentation? I asked. Permit applications with false timeline estimates, subcontractor agreements that violate union contracts, environmental impact statements that don't match their actual plans, she replied. I've been building a case to present to the city planning board, but I wanted to handle it professionally. I felt my stomach tighten. And now? Now I'm thinking the city planning board needs to see this information immediately, she said. Especially since they're about to award Hartwell Development the contract for the new civic center. And now I'm remembering that family comes first. Before I could protest, Maria had hung up. I tried calling her back, but she didn't answer. I had a feeling she was already making those phone calls she'd mentioned. I was right. By Friday afternoon, word was getting around town that Hartwell Development was under investigation by the City Planning Commission. By Monday morning, I heard through the grapevine that 2 major projects had been put on hold, citing concerns about permit compliance. Isabella came home from work looking shaken. Mom, did you hear about Ryan's family's company? I heard, I said carefully. Ryan got suspended today, she continued, along with his cousin and his uncle, Richard, scrambling to keep the business afloat. I felt that same conflicted emotion I'd been wrestling with all week. Part of me felt justice was being served, but another part of me wondered if we'd all gone too far. How do you feel about that? I asked Isabella. Confused, she admitted. A week ago I would have said he deserved everything he got, but after our talk the other night I don't know anymore. That's called growing up, I said, realizing that feeling justified and being right aren't always the same thing. That evening, Maria called me back. It's done, she said simply. What's done? Hartwell Development just lost their biggest contract. The one for the new shopping center, she said. Turns out the city doesn't appreciate working with companies under ethics investigation. Maria, was this really necessary? I asked. Rosa, her voice softened. I know you've spent your whole life being the better person, taking insults, turning the other cheek, working harder to prove your worth. But sometimes people need to learn that actions have consequences. And what if this destroys innocent people along the way? Then maybe they should have thought about that before they decided to attack our family, Maria said firmly. I'm not sorry for protecting you, Hermana. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen thinking about how quickly everything had spiraled. A cruel joke at a wedding had triggered a chain reaction that was destroying lives and businesses. And while I couldn't deny a part of me felt vindicated, I was beginning to wonder if the cost of this vindication was worth it. Isabella found me there an hour later, still thinking. Mom, you okay? Just wondering if we've all become people we don't recognize, I said honestly. Isabella sat down beside me. Maybe we have, but maybe sometimes that's what it takes to make sure people don't think they can walk all over us. I looked at my daughter and saw both the woman I'd raised and the stranger she'd become in her anger. Maybe, I said. But I hope we can find our way back to who we really are. The scandal kept growing like a wildfire none of us could control. What started as Isabella's impulsive act of revenge had somehow become the talk of the entire town. The pictures she'd posted weren't just circulating on social media anymore. They'd made their way to local gossip websites, and people were sharing them with crude commentary that had nothing to do with our original conflict. I found myself in the uncomfortable position of watching someone I'd once considered family being destroyed in the most public and humiliating way possible. Ryan had disappeared from social media entirely. His LinkedIn profile was gone. People said he hadn't left his parents' house in days. The irony wasn't lost on me. A week and a half ago, I'd been the one hiding in shame, wanting to disappear from public view. Now our roles were completely reversed. Mom, you need to see this, Miguel said, bursting into my house Wednesday morning with his laptop. I don't think I want to, I said honestly. No, you really do. He set the computer in front of me and showed me a local news article. The headline read, Wedding humiliation leads to social media revenge scandal. Local family destroys former son-in-law's life. But it wasn't the headline that caught my attention. It was the comments section. Hundreds of people were weighing in on our family drama, and most of them weren't taking our side. Look at this one. Miguel pointed to a comment from someone called Working Mom 23. Regardless of what happened at the wedding, sharing intimate photos is revenge porn, and it's illegal. This family has gone way too far. Another comment from local teacher read, The mother was wronged at the wedding, but destroying someone's career and reputation over a mean joke? This is overkill. I felt sick reading them. How did this get so out of hand? I asked. Because Isabella posted those pictures, Miguel said bluntly. Everything else we did. Confronting them at the charity auction, Maria going after their business. People might have understood that. But the pictures changed everything. Now we look like the bullies. Isabella walked in just as I was closing the laptop. She looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in days. I know what you're going to say, she started. Do you? I asked. Because I'm not sure I know what to say anymore. The pictures are everywhere now, she said quietly. Sites I've never heard of, forums, group chats. People are sharing them who don't even know what happened at the wedding. They just think they're funny. The weight of that hit me hard. Whatever cruel thing Ryan's family had done to me, it was contained to one evening, one room full of people. What Isabella had done to Ryan would follow him forever. Those images would never completely disappear from the internet. Mija, do you understand what you've done? I asked. This isn't just about revenge anymore. You've destroyed this boy's life permanently. He deserved it, Isabella said, but there was no conviction left in her voice. Did he deserve to have strangers commenting on his body? Did he deserve to have people he's never met sharing those pictures for entertainment? Did he deserve to lose his job and his reputation over something his mother wrote on a card? Isabella slumped against the wall. I just wanted them to hurt the way they hurt you. And now they do, I said. Ryan's life is ruined. His family's business is falling apart. They've been humiliated publicly. Congratulations, Mija. You got your revenge. How does it feel? Isabella couldn't answer my question. And honestly, I didn't expect her to. The silence in my living room was heavy with regret and consequences none of us had fully anticipated. But if I thought our family's response had been extreme, I was about to learn that desperate people do desperate things. It started with phone calls to the cleaning company where I worked nights. Anonymous callers claimed I was an unfit mother, that I'd raised a criminal, that the company shouldn't employ someone whose family destroys innocent people's lives. My supervisor, Mrs. Patterson, called me into her office Friday afternoon. Rosa, I've known you for 8 years, she said. You're one of the most reliable workers I've ever had, but these calls are getting out of hand. What kind of calls? I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I already knew. People saying you're dangerous, that your family are cybercriminals, that we're supporting predators by keeping you employed, Mrs. Patterson said, rubbing her temples. I know it's all garbage, but corporate is getting nervous about the attention. My stomach dropped. Are you firing me? Not yet, she said. But I need you to know that this situation is affecting more than just your family now. That evening, Miguel got a call from his daughter's school. Someone had contacted them, claiming that he was distributing inappropriate material to minors. It was completely false, but the school had to investigate any report involving children. Carlos found his work truck vandalized in his driveway, the word predator scratched across the paint. Roberto got threatening messages on social media from accounts that appeared to be fake. They're fighting back, Isabella said, when we all gathered at my house that weekend. Ryan's family and their friends are trying to destroy us the same way we destroyed them. Can you blame them? I asked. Look what we've done to their lives. They started it, Danny said angrily. And we finished it, I replied. Maybe too well. That's when Isabella's phone rang. She looked at the caller ID and went pale. It's the police, she said. We all went silent as she answered. I could only hear her side of the conversation, but it was enough. Yes, ma'am, I understand. Tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Yes, I'll have a lawyer. When she hung up, her hands were shaking. They want to question me about the pictures. Ryan's family filed charges for harassment and distribution of intimate images without consent. The room exploded into worried chatter, but I felt strangely calm. Maybe it was because I'd been expecting this moment since the night Isabella first posted those pictures. Good, I said, and everyone stopped talking. Good? Miguel asked. Mom, Isabella could go to jail. Isabella broke the law, I said simply. She needs to face the consequences. But they humiliated you first, Carlos protested. And that gave us the right to destroy their lives? I asked. Carlos, I love you for defending me, all of you. But look around. Look what we've become. We're getting threatening phone calls. My job is in jeopardy. Miguel's being investigated at school. Ryan's family is fighting back because we pushed them past their breaking point. Isabella looked at me with desperate eyes. Mom, what do I do? You tell the truth, I said. You explain why you did it. You take responsibility for your actions and you accept whatever consequences come. What if I go to prison? Then you go to prison, I said, and my heart broke saying it. Mija, I would rather visit you in jail knowing you're the woman I raised than have you free and knowing you destroyed someone's life out of spite. The family looked at me like I'd lost my mind, but for the first time in weeks I felt like myself again. I felt like the mother who had taught Isabella right from wrong, even when wrong felt satisfying. This ends now, I announced. No more retaliation, no more revenge, no more escalation. Whatever Ryan's family does to us from here on out, we take it with dignity. Even if they destroy our lives? Roberto asked. Especially then, I said. Because that's who we are, or at least it's who we're supposed to be. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Isabella hired a lawyer and was preparing for what looked like serious criminal charges. The local media had picked up the story, painting our family as vindictive bullies who had destroyed an innocent man's life over a wedding prank. Ryan's family wasn't done with us. Catherine Hartwell, despite her own business troubles, had hired a publicist to manage their image. Suddenly, Ryan was being portrayed as a victim of domestic abuse, a young man whose life had been destroyed by an unstable ex-partner and her enabling family. The narrative was effective. Ryan did interviews with local news stations, sitting in his parents' immaculate living room, looking fragile and traumatized. "I made mistakes," he said in one particularly devastating interview. "My family and I were wrong to write that note about Isabella's mother. It was mean and inappropriate. But this response, having my most private moments shared with the world, no one deserves that." He was right, and watching him cry on television made me sick to my stomach. Whatever cruel thing he'd done to me, he didn't deserve what Isabella had done to him. The interview went viral. Suddenly, our local family drama was national news. Wedding revenge gone wrong was trending on social media. Legal experts were using Isabella's case as an example of how revenge porn laws were being strengthened across the country. My phone rang constantly with reporters wanting statements, people wanting to interview me about raising a daughter who would do such a thing. I stopped answering calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Work became unbearable. My CO workers tried to be supportive, but I could feel them watching me, whispering when they thought I couldn't hear. Some defended me, saying I'd been wronged first. Others clearly thought my family had gone too far. The breaking point came when Mrs. Patterson called me into her office again. "Rosa, I'm sorry," she said, not meeting my eyes. "The company's decided to let you go because of Isabella's actions, because of the attention," she said. "We're a small company, we can't handle this kind of publicity. Every client is asking questions, and it's affecting our ability to get new contracts." 15 years of loyal service ended because my daughter couldn't control her anger. I cleaned out my locker in silence while my CO workers pretended not to watch. That night, I came home to find Isabella waiting for me with papers in her hand. "Mom, Ryan's lawyer sent these," she said. "They're not just pursuing criminal charges. They're suing for damages, emotional distress, lost wages, reputational harm. They want $250,000. I sat down heavily at my kitchen table. "Money we don't have." "Money I don't have," Isabella corrected. "This is my fault, not yours. Your actions, my consequences," I said. "That's how family works, mija." Miguel arrived an hour later with more bad news. Danny had been fired from his construction job after someone had sent his employer details about our family situation. Carlos's contracting business was losing clients who didn't want to be associated with the controversy. "They're destroying us systematically," Miguel said. "Everything we did to them, they're doing back to us." "As they should," I said. "We taught them how to play this game." "So, what do we do now?" Isabella asked. "We endure it," I said. "We accept the consequences of our choices, and we hope that someday we can rebuild what we've torn down." But I could see in Isabella's eyes that she was starting to understand the true cost of revenge. It wasn't just Ryan who had been destroyed, it was all of us. The woman who had humiliated me at a wedding had inadvertently taught my family that cruelty begets cruelty, that destruction spreads like wildfire, consuming everything in its path. The irony was bitter. In trying to defend my dignity, we had lost it entirely. In trying to prove we were better than people who looked down on us, we had become exactly what they thought we were. And the worst part was, I couldn't even be angry at Ryan's family anymore. They were just doing what we had taught them to do, fighting back with everything they had. 2 months after the wedding that started it all, I was sitting in my kitchen with a cup of coffee scrolling through job listings on my phone when someone knocked on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and lately, unexpected visitors usually brought bad news. Through the peephole, I saw Ryan standing on my porch. He looked different, thinner, wearing a simple polo shirt instead of the designer clothes I remembered. But what struck me was his posture. He wasn't the broken man from the news interviews, but he wasn't the arrogant boy from the wedding either. I opened the door but kept the chain latched. "Ryan," I said. "Mrs. Martinez," he said formally. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to see, but I need to talk to you. Please." Something in his voice made me unlock the chain. He sat across from me at my kitchen table, the same table where Isabella had planned her revenge, where my family had plotted their response, where we'd received legal documents that were slowly dismantling our lives. "I'm dropping the charges against Isabella," he said directly. I studied his face carefully. "Why?" "Because I've had 2 months to think about what happened, and I realized this cycle has to end somewhere," he said. "What my family did to you was inexcusable. I should have torn up that card the moment I saw it, but I didn't." "No, you didn't," I agreed. "I was a coward who wanted my family's approval more than I wanted to do the right thing," he said, his voice steady but pained. "I let them treat you like you were beneath us, when the truth is, you raised a daughter who was too good for me." "You're right," I said. "It has." He looked surprised by my agreement. "I expected you to defend your family." "I've spent 3 months watching good people become cruel because they love me," I said. "I've lost my job, my daughter might go to prison, and my family's reputation is destroyed. All because some people thought it would be funny to humiliate me at a wedding." Ryan's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry about the note. I didn't write it, but I should have stopped it. I should have defended you." "Why didn't you?" "Because I was young and stupid and wanted my family to like Isabella," he said honestly. "I thought if I went along with their jokes, they'd accept her better. I never imagined it would hurt you so much, and I never imagined your family would hurt us so much in return." We sat quietly for a moment. I could hear the clock ticking on my wall, the same clock that had counted down the minutes of countless difficult conversations in this kitchen. "I need you to know that Isabella has been trying to fix this," he continued. She's called my lawyer's office 14 times, asking how she can make amends. She spent her savings trying to get those pictures removed from every website she can find. She even wrote me a letter, 12 pages, apologizing and explaining what that wedding day did to her. I hadn't known about the letter. She never told me. She's ashamed, Ryan said. Not of defending you, but of how she did it. She knows she crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. After he left, I sat alone, thinking about forgiveness and consequences, about how pain can make good people do terrible things, and how sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose to stop the cycle. When Isabella came home from work an hour later, I told her about Ryan's visit. He's dropping the charges, I said. The relief on her face was immediate, followed quickly by something that looked like guilt. Why would he do that? Because he understands something we're all learning, I said. That revenge doesn't heal anything. It just spreads the pain around until everyone's infected with it. Because he's a better person than any of us gave him credit for, I added. And because he understands that revenge just keeps spreading until everyone's destroyed. Isabella sat down and put her head in her hands. Mom, I've ruined everything. Your job, our family's reputation, Ryan's life. Yes, I said simply. You have. She looked up at me, surprised by my bluntness. But you also learned from it, I continued. And you've been trying to make it right, even when you thought no one was watching. That tells me the woman I raised is still in there. What happens now? Now we rebuild, I said slowly, carefully, and with a lot more wisdom than we had before. 1 year later, I'm sitting in the same kitchen, but everything has changed. The woman writing this story bears little resemblance to the one who walked into that country club feeling invisible and unwanted. Isabella never faced prison time when Ryan dropped the charges. The prosecutor's office decided the case wasn't worth pursuing without a victim's cooperation. She found work at a nonprofit organization that helps families navigate social services, work that uses her experience with both privilege and struggle. She calls me every week, and slowly, we've rebuilt our relationship on a foundation of hard-earned wisdom rather than just love. Ryan relocated to Portland and now works for a legal aid clinic specializing in privacy rights and online harassment cases. I heard he's doing well, though we maintain no contact by mutual agreement. Sometimes healing requires distance. The men in my family learned different lessons. Miguel channels his protective instincts into coaching community center boxing, teaching kids that strength comes from discipline, not anger. Carlos rebuilt his contracting business with a focus on affordable housing projects, using his skills to help families like ours rather than just chasing bigger profits. Roberto found work as a substance abuse counselor, his own past struggles finally becoming a source of wisdom rather than shame. Maria's accounting firm survived the controversy, though she lost the Civic Center contract when the city chose a different developer entirely. She's learned to separate business competition from family loyalty, a lesson that's made her both more successful and more ethical. Catherine Hartwell started volunteering at a literacy program for working adults after losing several major social connections. Whether genuine or calculated, her newfound interest in understanding different perspectives has actually helped real people learn to read. As for me, I found work with a family who needed a live-in caregiver for their elderly mother. The pay is modest, but they treat me with respect, and I've discovered I have a talent for this work. More importantly, I've learned that dignity isn't something others can take from you. It's something you give away. The lesson that emerged from our family's temporary descent into revenge is this: being wronged doesn't automatically make your response right. Ryan's family was cruel, elitist, and everything I disliked about people who mistake inherited wealth for inherent worth. But that didn't give us the right to systematically destroy their lives. We all became strangers to ourselves because we let justified hurt transform into something toxic. That note at my place card was mean and unnecessary, but it was ultimately just words on paper, while our response had lasting consequences for real people. If I could return to that wedding day, I would still want Isabella to defend me. I would still want my family to stand up for what's right. But I would want us to do it without losing ourselves in the process, without becoming the very thing we claim to oppose. We proved that working-class people aren't pushovers, but the victory felt hollow because we'd compromised our values to achieve it. The real triumph came later, in choosing to rebuild rather than continue destroying, in learning when to stop fighting. Today, I'm proud of the woman I raised, not because she destroyed someone who hurt me, but because she learned from her mistakes and chose to become better. I'm proud of my family, not for their capacity for revenge, but for their eventual capacity for wisdom, and I'm proud of myself, not because I was defended, but because I finally understood that the strongest response to cruelty is often grace. The wedding card called me a fake and uneducated mother. For a few months, in my pain and fury, maybe I was fake, pretending that revenge could heal wounds, that destruction could build anything worthwhile. But the woman writing this story today is the mother I always aspired to be, flawed, human, but ultimately decent. And that's worth more than any revenge could ever be.